The night swallowed the road whole as a single set of headlights cut through the darkness, revealing a young woman collapsed on the gravel, her breath shallow, her dress soaked with rain and blood, and a tired single father who should have driven past, but didn't, stepped out of his car and changed both their lives forever. If you believe that kindness still matters, that one good choice can rewrite a destiny, please take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Brightly Kindness, because stories like this are for everyone who still believes in second chances. He was a single dad named Daniel, the kind of man life had quietly worn down rather than loudly broken. Ever since his wife passed years earlier, the world had become a place of responsibilities and quiet sacrifices. He worked long hours fixing engines and hauling scrap, hands always smelling of oil, heart always heavy with worry about his little son waiting at home. That night he had taken the longer road to avoid traffic, the lonely stretch where streetlights were rare and help was even rarer. When his headlights caught the shape on the ground, his first instinct was fear. Fear of trouble, fear of what he couldn't afford, fear of getting involved when his own life was already hanging by a thread. But then he saw her face, pale and trembling, and something deeper than fear rose inside him. He knelt on the cold ground, lifting her gently, realizing she was barely conscious and losing time fast. His hands shook not from weakness, but from the weight of knowing that if he didn't act, she would die right there on that forgotten road. Daniel wrapped her in his jacket, stained and worn, and placed her in the backseat of his old car. Every mile to the nearest hospital felt endless. The engine rattled, warning lights flickered, and rain hammered the windshield like the world itself was testing his resolve. He whispered prayers he hadn't spoken in years, not for himself, but for the girl whose life now rested on his decision. He arrived at the emergency entrance with seconds to spare, collapsing into a chair as doctors rushed her away. Only then did exhaustion hit him, heavy and unforgiving. He stayed through the night, ignoring the calls from his boss and the ache in his bones, because leaving felt like abandoning her a second time. Days passed and Daniel kept returning after work, bringing small things he thought might help: clean clothes, fruit, a book from a second-hand shop. He never asked her name, never asked who she was or why she had been alone on that road. When she finally woke, weak but alive, he simply smiled and made sure she wasn't scared. What Daniel didn't know was that hospitals across the country were already buzzing quietly, that private investigators had traced a missing persons report to this very place, and that the girl he had rescued was the daughter of a billionaire whose disappearance had shaken boardrooms and media offices alike. She had vanished weeks earlier after fleeing a life of pressure, betrayal, and danger she didn't yet understand. When the truth finally surfaced, it came like a storm. Black cars filled the parking lot. Suits and security appeared overnight. The girl's father, a powerful man with more money than time, arrived shaken and hollow-eyed, seeing his daughter alive after weeks of believing he had lost her forever. Daniel stood back, feeling suddenly small, his stained clothes and tired face out of place among wealth and authority. He tried to slip away quietly, believing his role was over, believing kindness didn't need recognition. But the girl saw him, remembered his presence in the dark, remembered the warmth of his jacket and the steadiness of his hands. She refused to let him disappear. The billionaire learned everything about Daniel's life in a single afternoon: the late nights, the single income, the son who waited for him at home, the man who could have driven past but didn't. Offers of money followed, large enough to erase every hardship Daniel had ever known, but he refused at first, uncomfortable with the idea that compassion needed payment. What changed him wasn't the money, but the understanding that accepting help could mean more time with his child, fewer nights of exhaustion, and a future where survival wasn't a daily battle. The girl insisted on staying in his life, visiting his small home, bonding with his son, learning what real care looked like outside guarded mansions and silent hallways. Life didn't transform overnight, but it shifted in meaningful ways. Daniel opened a small repair shop with honest funding and no strings attached. His son smiled more. The girl healed, not just from her injuries, but from the loneliness wealth had wrapped around her for years. And the billionaire, once distant and guarded, learned humility watching a man with nothing give everything to a stranger on a dark road. Kindness had done what money never could. It had connected broken people and reminded them what mattered. Before this story ends, please leave a comment sharing where you're watching from and whether you believe one act of kindness can truly change a life. In the end, Daniel never thought of himself as a hero. He was just a father who stopped his car when it mattered. And if this story touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that goodness still exists in quiet moments and lonely places, please like, comment, and share this video and stay connected with Brightly Kindness. Because the world needs more reminders that kindness, given freely, always finds its way back.